Welcome to London Liverpool Street Station, here, well, in the centre of London. Today I'll be flying with Ryanair to Edinburgh in Scotland. But first, I've got to get to Stansted Airport, which requires a very long train ride. Whilst I was planning my trip to Europe, I made it the highest priority to fly on today's airline of choice, as not only were multiple members of my Discord channel adamant that I fly with this airline, but I also wanted to find out for myself if the rumours were true. London is by far one of the most iconic cities in all of Europe, having been established nearly 2,000 years ago by the ancient Romans. Originally named Londinium and located where the modern-day Bank of England is, the city has grown to be one of the most important cities in not only the UK, but also the entire planet, home to some of the most influential people, and not to mention the British monarchy. As of 2025, there are 6 airports that serve the city: Heathrow, Gatwick, Stansted, Luton, Southend, and City. Today, I'll be flying out of Stansted Airport, located 40 miles or 64 kilometers to the northwest of the London CBD. Now, getting to Stansted can be quite the challenge, especially if you are a foreigner. There are multiple ways to get to Stansted Airport: taxi or Uber, driving, bus, or the express train, which was my choice today. I booked my ticket on board this train approximately 2 weeks in advance, whilst I was back in Australia, and cost me approximately £10. Now, Ryanair. Where do I begin? If you're an AvGeek, I can 100% guarantee that you've heard of this airline. To those that aren't AvGeeks, Ryanair is infamous for its ridiculously cheap prices, hard landings, and hidden fees. To whether or not this is all true, well, let's find out. Today I'll be answering all 3 questions. Does Ryanair have hidden fees? How hard is the landing? And how much did I pay? The flight itself and the extras. But for now, it's time to check in. Having arrived at Stansted Airport, I quickly proceeded inside the terminal and upstairs to start the check-in process. Check-in for Ryanair can be found at the Echo and Foxtrot area, with Ryanair occupying the entire zone. Today, I was instructed to use the Foxtrot zone for check-in. If you have never flown with Ryanair before, or rather, if you don't follow their rules, you'll quickly learn about all their hidden fees, like I did. As I failed to check in online 2 hours prior to the flight, I was forced to pay £55 in order to do so at the airport. Once the check-in process was completed, I quickly turned around and made my way to the security checkpoint off to the left-hand side of the building. Security today was quite easy, however, it took approximately 15 minutes to pass through due to extra checks being carried out. This also meant I was thoroughly scrutinized over my camera mount, having a pistol grip. Once airside, you are directly forced into the duty-free shopping area. However, as my flight is a domestic flight within the United Kingdom, I was not allowed to purchase anything, not that I wanted to do so anyways. Post Duty Free is an absolutely massive shopping area and food court, which I neglected to film as there were just way too many people. I estimate approximately 1,000 people were waiting in the food court, and I'm not even exaggerating. Instead of trying to find a seat at the food court, I decided to grab a sandwich and coffee at Cafe Nero's and made my way to the gate in preparation for today's departure. Stansted Airport is really weird in that the gates are mixed. By that I mean the northern pier is gates 40 to 59, the centre pier is gates 81 to 93, and the southern pier is gates 1 to 39. At first it nearly caught me off guard, as I almost hopped on the shuttle to gates 1 to 39, but when I double checked where I was going, I quickly altered my direction to the correct gates. As my flight today will be departing out of gate 85, a fairly lengthy 10-minute walk was required. However, the walk itself was pretty cool, as the windows gave unobstructed views out onto the apron, taxiway and runway in the distance. Upon arriving at the gate, so did that of today's aircraft. Pulling in on stand is a Boeing 737-800 registered as Golf Romeo Uniform Kilo Oscar. Construction of this airframe was completed at Boeing's final assembly line in Seattle, Washington in June of 2010. She first flew with Ryanair under her Irish registration before being retrofitted with split scimitar winglets and being sent to Ryanair UK under her current registration, making this aircraft nearly 15 years old. Boarding commenced shortly after the aircraft had arrived, starting with priority passengers and then everyone else. Ryanair's cost-saving tactics are borderline ridiculous, as not only do they charge for literally everything, they also do not use jet bridges, rather opting for built-in air stairs. However, this allows the airline to avoid the fees that are typically included in the ticket prices of other airlines. Ryanair's 737-800s all have the exact same configuration, with 189 economy class seats in a 3-3 layout. This morning, I shall be seated in 24 Foxtrot on the right-hand side or the starboard side of the aircraft. Ryanair has opted for the Zodiac Z110 seat for their 737s, which feature 29.5 inches or 75 centimeters of pitch and 17.7 inches or 45 centimeters of width. There is a small tray table which can fold down but does not extend. There is no seat pocket. The safety card can be found on the back of the seat, as well as the QR code for the menu. Above are individual reading lights, air vents, and a flight attendant call button.
May we have your complete attention as we demonstrate the safety features of this aircraft. These features may differ from aircraft that you have flown on.
Soon the safety briefing commenced, and we pushed back from gate 85, right on time.
Jackets are stowed in a pocket beneath your seat or in the panel above your head. If it's needed, remove the jacket from its packet and please study the safety card located within the area you are seated, as it includes important safety information specific to this aircraft type. It is essential that cabin signs,
We taxied to runway 04 via Bravo, Hotel and Lima. Now please enjoy this unedited takeoff. After takeoff, we made a sweeping left-hand turn to the north away from Stansted, which set up our northerly course for Edinburgh. Flight time today is 54 minutes, covering a distance of 349 miles or 561 kilometers, cruising at 38,000 feet. Unfortunately today, due to the current weather conditions over the United Kingdom, barely anything was visible, as the cloud coverage was quite extensive. For some reason, my card was also not working on this flight, so therefore I was unable to purchase any of the famous Ryanair meals, such as the lasagna, so I instead opted for the toasted sandwich that I brought on board the flight. As we continued up the English countryside, there wasn't much to be seen outside, even when the clouds did part, revealing only lush green trees. On board the aircraft are 3 bathrooms, 1 at the front and 2 at the rear. Inside is everything you would typically come to expect, even for a low-cost carrier, including women's sanitary products and scented hand soap. Soon we commenced our descent into Edinburgh. As is typical for Edinburgh, today's approach consisted of a very gentle yet long turn to the east after coming in from the south, which aligned the aircraft with the glide slope, accompanied by some moderate turbulence. As I stated earlier, Ryanair is famous for its rough landings. Whilst I find the memes about Ryanair landings absolutely hilarious, I'm not sure that they're entirely fair. Boeing's training indicates that to prioritize safety and efficiency, especially in rough conditions, it's better to have hard landings, which it seems these pilots do deliberately, and not because that they are poorly trained, as I have had some fairly rough landings with Qantas and Virgin back in Australia. So, let's find out if this is the case. Now please enjoy this unedited landing. After landing, we taxied back to the terminal via Charlie, Lima, Golf 1 and Golf. We pulled into gate 22, 6 minutes ahead of our scheduled arrival time. Stepping off the aircraft, I thanked the Ryanair crew for the great flight before turning my attention away from them and towards my next flight. So, I just flew on Europe's cheapest airline. What are my thoughts? Well, as always, let's start from the beginning. Check-in was a bit annoying. Having to pay basically double my airfare felt like an absolute scam. However, I have nobody to blame but myself for this. But it also answers the first question. Does Ryanair have hidden fees? Yes, they certainly do. Security today was a little on the slow side due to much more thorough searches being conducted. On board, the seat was thin, yet very comfy. Not once did I have to shift my body, as the seats are actually molded to slightly conform to the body's natural curve. And lastly, the crew were friendly and kind. However, at times, they were extremely unprofessional, leaning against the frame of the aircraft rather than standing up straight, especially during boarding. It was also a bit strange that the majority of them was Spanish rather than English or Scottish, though I guess it doesn't really make a difference. So, would I recommend you to fly with Ryanair? Well, considering this flight cost me £63 or 130 Australian dollars, which does not include the £55 check-in fee, it's not a bad price for a 1-hour flight. However, if you include the check-in fee, the total price comes out to 245 Australian dollars, which is quite extensive, especially for a low-cost carrier. Even British Airways on the same route was cheaper than that, so just keep that in mind if you ever consider flying with them. So to that I say, if you can snag a good deal, well why wouldn't you? As a first-time Ryanair flyer, I did not have a complete understanding of how they work, and that's fair enough in my opinion. However, what I would highly recommend you to do before you fly with them, and what I will certainly do next time, is read the terms and conditions. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure you check out my other videos if you want to see more. And I have said this before, but I now have a Discord server. Feel free to join. The link can be found at the top of the description. And as always, feel free to press the notification button too, as it will let you know whenever I upload, which happens every Friday at 8 PM Sydney time. And I hope to see you all again in the next one. See you later!